It may feel like the sky is falling, but just remember, the Falcons are still in the driver's seat to make the playoffs.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can start the season with a big return. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. the Jolly Green Giant, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for a very long time, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP, still going strong on this illustrious podcast. I thank each and every one of you that goes strong with me as everydayers each and every day. That means you make this podcast your first listen each and every day. And to become an everydayer, all you have to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So today's episode, we are pivoting towards this Week 13 matchup with our guest, Charles McDonald of Yahoo Sports and the Football 301 podcast. And we'll talk about sort of his thoughts on the defense as well as other topics, and his thoughts on the Falcons season so far. So without further ado, let's jump into that conversation with Charles McDonald right now. Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast. And we have an illustrious guest, a frequent guest on this podcast. You could argue that he wouldn't be where he is without being a guest on this podcast. And I will absolutely remind him every single time he comes back on this pod. And that is, of course, Charles McDonald, who covers the NFL for Yahoo Sports, probably the world's most famous Falcon fan at this point in time, at least if you follow NFL Twitter circles and whatnot. You can find him on the Football 301 podcast with Nate Tice and Matt Harmon. And we're going to talk today about what his thoughts are on this Falcons season so far, look ahead to this Chargers matchup, and maybe talk a little bit about the defense. Charles knows a thing or two about defense and if it's fixable. But before we get there, let's talk about this Falcons season so far, Charles. And so what are your thoughts? We're in Week 13 coming off the bye. Falcons are 6-5 in first place. Seem like, they're barely hanging on to that thing, but how are you feeling about the Falcons season so far?
On one hand, it's kind of exactly what I expected, almost to a T, but I wouldn't say aspects of it still haven't been extremely frustrating. Because at some point, when you look at their roster and just the roster of talent that they stack up against each week, that this is not one of the best overall teams in the league. But the idea was, hey, you've thrown a veteran quarterback here. You probably have just enough pieces where you can have a good offense and be watchable for, 13 out of the 14, the 17 games you play, which is I would take that. I would take that a heartbeat over what we've experienced over the past 2 seasons. But, losing that second Saints game, getting blown out by the Broncos, that stuff that makes you stop and go, okay, still another offseason or two away. And then, how's Kirk? How's he look at that point? But the depression, we can get to the depression later. We've trafficked enough depression over the years. But, I'll say the season is probably exactly what I was expecting and to a degree hoping for. Probably I hoped you could get a little bit more out of the defense, but not all that surprised if you just follow the track record of the players they have on the roster, Jimmy Lake's record, and just the general Falcons record. We don't really do that defense stuff over here. We don't play that. But I still expect them at this point to get to the wild card, even though they have made it unnecessarily tight on themselves by losing that stupid Saints game in New Orleans, because that was the one you couldn't give up. They're bad enough where you should beat them every time. So to lose that one, and now you're only you're technically 2 games up on the Bucs, but still functionally kind of won. It's tough.
Yeah. And Charles, I recall you sort of infamously on the Football 301 podcast after week one, basically saying season's over, right?
We're done. Hey, and
if
we had gotten the version of the Eagles that exists now back in week 2, this would be over.
So basically, I'm asking, like, are we basically 2 more losses away from being right back in that position?
I mean, yeah, but also I will say, if looking at the rest of the schedule, if they don't make the playoffs, like something has gone horribly wrong. And I would even say, like, you can lose this game to the Chargers this weekend, and you can even lose the game next week to the Vikings, and you should still be like, we should make the playoffs, because the last 4 teams, you got to get past the Commanders, who haven't looked great, but like, you got the Giants, you got the Raiders, you got the Panthers left on your schedule. Come on, like, I know the next 2 weeks are tough, but you got to get there. You have to get there, like, or else if they don't make the playoffs, I think this season's an absolute failure, like a complete failure, because you spent all this money on Kirk Cousins, and I think he's been a little bit less than I've expected, just because I thought he would be a little further along with the Achilles recovery. And I didn't think that he would go like full on 100% statue in the way that they have it, to a degree where it's kind of hindered the offense. But like, dude, if you let the Bucks overtake you and get into the front of this wild card race, yeah, like, we should probably be asking for the team to be sold, because that's ridiculous. So obviously the season's not over, but you had a chance to, like, really stiff arm the Bucks. If you just get that win over the Saints, and now you're back to fighting for your lives again, come on, that doesn't feel very good. That just doesn't feel very good.
It's the Falcons, so Falcons and the Falcons. So I've been telling people the Bucks will catch them. It's just a question of whether or not the Falcons will win enough games at the end to stave them off. But hey, it is what it is. It's they got to make it the most dramatic way possible, no matter what happens. So that's where we are with the season, but we'll turn our attention to this Chargers matchup in week 13 and sort of pick Charles's brain on how exactly he thinks the Falcons can beat this LA Chargers team as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 10 million active users, because it's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike on other apps, Prize Picks is just you against the numbers. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in, and you can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. And if you're looking to get in on the action, because certain sports books aren't available in your state, like California and Georgia, don't worry, Prize Picks is. And withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. You can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. So Mr. Reliable Bijan Robinson, are you going to go more or less on his 72.5 yard rushing yards after Derrick Henry dropped 140 on the Chargers this past week? Check it out by downloading Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game. Holiday shopping kicks into high gear this week, guys, and I think I found the perfect gift for my parents who don't get to see their grandkids as often as they would like, and it might be the perfect gift for you too. The Skylight Frame is a touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's easy to use. Setup takes less than 60 seconds. Seamless sharing allows you to invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email, and add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send photos to a frame across the country. It's the fastest and easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop, and it looks beautiful in your home. Photos are displayed in crisp HD resolution, and you can choose from 5 different frame styles. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, you can get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NFL. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NFL. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NFL. So continuing today's Locked On Falcons here with Charles McDonald of Yahoo Sports. Basically, point blank, Charles, how do the Falcons beat the Chargers this week?
I mean, it's tough. I felt really bad about that Broncos game going into it, and I missed it live because I was at the Jets Colts game. But when I went back and watched it, I was like, oh my god! Like if you play my first thought was like, if you play like this against the Chargers, the score is going to be exactly the same because if you just want to start off with the Falcons defense, I you sit here and because I remember I was reading all this stuff about like how Bo Nix just like shredded the Falcons, and I was like, oh my god, like I kind of got to check back into this because I've seen them lose a lot of ways, but like getting shredded by Bo Nix would be something that's even pretty low for where the Falcons are right now. And I didn't really find that to be the case. I thought it was just unbelievably poor showing from the Falcons defense in terms of like knowing where to be, making tackles, like block destruction in the open field. It was just all so bad, like where you're just getting nickel and dime, and not even nickel and dime because there were a lot of explosive plays like just on screens and like bullshit like play action looks where you would expect someone when you catch a screen, like you expect the defender to be within like 7 yards of the person who catches the ball, and they're not, and everything's getting lined up perfectly for these to become explosives. And I think if you're going to run into the Chargers who want to play like that same downhill style of football, that can be a problem. And also just the fact that the Chargers wide receivers aren't anything to write home about, but like you watch Justin Herbert and how he's playing right now, and you know that doesn't necessarily matter because he can get the ball to just about anyone at any point in the field. It just depends on if they make those catches. So I'm terrified for the Falcons defense this week because they've already shown that they can kind of get blown off the ball. They don't get a whole lot of pressure, and they're bad at tackling in the open field. Like that's just we're not gap sound. We don't rush a passer. We don't tackle. Like we're going to give up a lot of points like that. And it did feel like they punched above their weight class a little bit earlier in the season. Playing well against Philly, playing decently against Kansas City. But I think when you start looking over the course of a season, like just the overall talent will eventually win out, and the Falcons they aren't at that spot right now. So on defense, I'm scared. I'm really scared about what could happen to the Falcons on Sunday because that like Harbaugh's got to be licking his chops watching that Broncos film. Like these guys are soft, they don't tackle, they don't hit. So why would we not just pound the ball 40 times? And there might be some times where we get stuffed for 2 or 3, but that Jacob Dobbins is good for some explosives. So, that's a tough spot. And on the flip side, I thought that when I went back and I watched the offensive film against the Broncos defense, that was one of the few times where I felt like the Falcons kind of got out schemed in terms of just what the Broncos were doing, where in terms of coverage looks, blitz looks, like getting free rushers home. I thought the Broncos had a really good game plan for Atlanta. And that just based off of what Jesse Minter has been for Michigan and now the Chargers, they don't have like great defensive talent, especially like on the back end. I know they've got some dudes in the front seven, but the secondary is gettable, but they're just so well coached. They're so sound that even for a team like the Ravens for 3 quarters last night, you can kind of go toe to toe with them until eventually Lamar and Derrick Henry break the game open for you in the fourth. So I'm nervous, man. I think the Falcons like on a roster level are more talented than the Chargers, but got to give the coaching edge to Los Angeles right now.
Yeah, ultimately, I do think that that's probably the thing that matters the most, right? Can your coaches get the most out of your talent versus the opposite? And it didn't. These last couple of weeks, we haven't seen that from the Falcons, and hopefully, coming out of this bye week, we'll see more of that, which I think goes to what your point was, that we were seeing that a little bit earlier in the season, where it seemed like they're getting more out of this talent than initially thought, but. I'm curious your thoughts. Can you play this style of defense that the Falcons play, which is just letting teams kind of nickel and dime them all day against a quarterback like Justin Herbert? Do you have to just kind of – because I kind of feel like you have to be aggressive and attack him and blitz him and hope that the sort of Greg Roman doesn't have answers for blitzes sort of rears its ugly head from time to time, and just basically make Justin Herbert be an elite quarterback and hit some tight window throws and all those types of things that just make it difficult for him. But that's not really how the Falcons play defensively. So do you feel like that shift should be happening this week?
Yeah, you'd hope so, because I think when a lot of people think about Justin Herbert, they think, kind of like a trebuchet, like something where you're just sitting back there, you're going to wind up and just launch it down the field a few times a game. But he's actually just a really precise, like in rhythm quarterback. I think my co-host for Football 301, Nate Tice, he's always compared Herbert to like a taller Drew Brees, where it's just, I'm fine living at 5 yards at a time if that's what you're going to give me. So it's really hard to prepare for a quarterback like that, because he'll sit there and he'll be patient and just kind of wait for the openings. But when it's there, like, he's gonna go for the jugular. Like we saw it a couple times last night against the Ravens, where if he feels like he's got something open deep down the field, he'll take it. But he's also not afraid to just check it down every once in a while. So it's tough for a defense like the Falcons when I struggled sometimes to find like the defensive game plan that would work for Atlanta. Like where you are with your talent level, especially now that Grady Jarrett has like obviously taken a step back coming in off of that knee injury. He isn't quite the same player that he was in the past. And I mean, shoot, it's 10 years too. Like, he's been here for a really long time. So like, you start to me, like when you look at how the Falcons play defense is where you really start to feel like their lack of defensive line talent. Because like, it's okay to let teams nickel and dime you when every once in a while, you're going to have some guy up front just take over, but they don't really have that right now. So I don't really think that the scheme that they've been running is conducive to the talent that they have. But you could also look at their defense and say, you have two good players, and it's corner and a safety. That's not that hard to scheme away from, no matter how you want to call your defense, regardless, because you're going to win too many battles in the trenches. So for the Falcons, shoot, I'd probably just say blitz them, F it, go for it. Like, you're not, like, if you sit back, you're never going to make a play unless someone makes it for you. Like, if someone throws an errant ball and AJ Terrell or Jesse Bates can get their hands on it, like, that's where the Falcons are kind of making their plays. And I just don't think that's going to work this week. Force the issue, because it's always getting forced upon you. So let's go. Let's blitz. Let's see if we can make something happen, because nothing's happening regardless.
Okay. Well,
it's been so long since they've had a good defense. Like, dude, I'm 30. Michael Vick was a quarterback. That was damn near 20 years ago at this point.
Yeah, man. Well, I have no words, Charles. I'm sorry. Like, it is what it is. Like, that's part of the reason why, like, the defense being bad doesn't bother me, because I've seen a lot of bad defenses over the years, and it's just like, all right, same old Falcons, I guess. Like, we'll get them next year. We'll try it next year and whatnot. But it is like, but speaking of next year, I kind of want to talk about, we talk about the Falcons defense not necessarily working. And that gets to a topic I'm just curious to pick your brain on is, the Falcons come from this sort of Brandon Staley style defense. And I'm just kind of looking around the league, and I'm not seeing very many of this style of defense outside of Philadelphia with the sort of OG Vic Fangio really working in today's NFL. And I'm just curious to pick your brain, Charles, if like the Staley system is dead in the NFL at this point, and we'll talk about that to wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Get ready to tackle the NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is going to give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, so that when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page where you place your bets. check out this weekend's action between the Falcons and Chargers, or you want to get into, big rivalry week in college football or NBA action, FanDuel has it all. So head on over to FanDuel.com to join today. And again, get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. So, Charles, the Brandon Staley system sort of took the league by storm in 2020 when he was the DC of the LA Rams. They had the best defense in the league that year. And you've seen all these defenses clamoring to get, he learned under Vic Fangio when they were in Chicago together. And you've seen a lot of these Fangio disciples and Staley disciples sort of proliferate around the NFL over the next couple of years. And not too many of them have been successful, if by my count. Sean Desai in Philadelphia, Raheem, you got diminishing returns in LA over the years. I'm sure there are plenty of other examples. Ed Donatel infamously with that 22 Vikings defense. And I'm just wondering, because I talked to some other Falcon fans, and they were one of them was basically saying, like, this defense is dead in the NFL. And I'm just curious do you sort of agree with that statement, or can this still work? It's just you need, kind of dudes up front to make it work, or whatever you think it is. So what are your thoughts on the Staley system and its ability to continue to work in the NFL?
Well, it's too personnel reliant, right? To me, where I think the system, it works. Like, in theory, it probably how everyone would love to play defense, Yeah, I'll put Aaron Donald in the middle of the field, and we'll have Jalen Ramsey in his prime play slot defender, and he can play outside corner, like at a Hall of Fame corner level, and have fun with that. Like we can run a 5 or 6 man box when I know that one of my defensive linemen can beat literally triple teams at will when he feels like it. And I think that was always my hesitation when he was there, because people were like, yeah. We need to light boxes. That's the future. Like, okay, but at the core of its game, if football teams can run on you, they're never going to put the ball in the air. Like, every football coach would love to play football, getting 5 yards on the ground every single play, and just bleed out the clock and go home and win 21-0. So when you have these defenses, like when he got to LA with the Chargers, then all of a sudden they're the worst defense of football and they're not covering anyone and they have the worst run defense of football. It's like, yeah, because like you replaced Aaron Donald reps with like Sebastian Joseph Day. It's not it's just not the same thing. And when you're going over to LA, I think one of the toughest things for them was like Derwin James maybe dealing with injuries and not being at the peak of his play. He's been a lot better this year, but you just had such a massive downgrade from, literally 2 Hall of Fame players in their prime. I don't know if people are at Jalen Ramsey first ballot Hall of Famer, but like I would imagine he'll be in there one day. And obviously we know Aaron Donald's gonna be first ballot, so that's tough. And I think it's been interesting when people. Yeah, because I've seen people talk about like the Vic Fangio stuff too. But again, he's obviously the person who runs the system the best. But again, like this is largely personnel driven to me. No one has more quick pressures in the NFL this year than Jalen Carter. From the middle of defense according to Next Gen Stats. And then you look back, okay, well then who's in our secondary? Coop DeJean has been one of the best defensive backs in the league this year. As a rookie, and you look at the other cornerback, Quinyon Mitchell. So maybe you don't have one singular dynamite force like you did with Jalen Ramsey, but you have 2 guys who can do his job together. And I think that's helping a lot. And I think it's funny because you're kind of seeing some of the same things happen in LA that you did that you're doing in Philly, where sometimes your interior play is so damn good and you're getting enough good play from your DBs that, oh shoot, like Nakobe Dean, is he a star all of a sudden? I don't know, but like I know that this getting to play with these guys, it makes it conducive for him. So I think the scheme obviously works, the system obviously works, but it's more personnel reliant than any other scheme in the league, because you're asking your big guys like, hey, we're going to devote fewer resources to actually being stout up front. So the guys that are down there have to be incredibly good, or else the entire structure of your defense falls over and falls apart. Obviously the Falcons are nowhere near any of that. So like, let alone getting, a potential Hall of Fame, like defensive line caliber type. Now they need to find a replacement for Grady Jarrett down the road, who is also always needed like a second running mate that's legit. So yeah, you're probably pretty far off from being able to run a scheme like that. But to say it doesn't work, I don't think is correct. It's just you need more than any other, because like I said, at the core of the game, people want to be able to run the ball. They want to be able to like physically move people out of the way. And when you have 5 guys in the box, it's really easy to do that. Unless one of those guys is Aaron Donald or Jalen Carter.
I think that's fair. I think that's definitely fair. We will see if the Falcons go after those guys. I've been pushing, hey, trade it all for Micah Parsons if he's available this offseason. Is that enough to make it work? Do you think?
No, but it would be fun. It would definitely be fun. I mean, the Cowboys defense, because like the Cowboys defense, they still stink with Micah Parsons on the field largely.
True.
But like, even just in like the 2 or 3 games that he's been back, they've turned back into like a top 5 pass rush team, which is something that we have never had. So I would do 3, 4 first round picks, whatever. Like, I don't care what it takes. Like, okay, how many failed first round picks, second round picks, third round picks in the front 7 have we seen? Just trade them all. Trade them all to go get Micah. Dallas, I will give you three drafts worth of premium picks for Micah Parsons, and don't look at my football team ever again. We're over here doing messed up shit. So we're just gonna enjoy what I have. Go get a pass rusher, please. Go get 2. I really hope that Penix is good, because every week that Jared Verse looks like another superstar edge rusher in this league, I get a little bit sick. So I really hope that Michael Penix is good. Like, I don't care about missing on any other quarterback you could have traded up for one. I need a goddamn pass rusher. All right. It's been too long. I just want one. Just one legit one. And I don't think I'm asking for too much.
Well, just if you're ever feeling down on Michael Penix, just watch that throw to Ray McLeod last week, and
hey,
you'll get excited again.
Hey, his EPA per dropback was higher than Kirk Cousins for the game. Something to build on.
So we'll see what's in store for the Falcons' future. But Charles, always appreciate you coming on, sharing your insight into some of these topics. We'll see if the Falcons can get their season back on track against the Chargers this weekend. Obviously, this weekend is a big holiday weekend here in the States, Thanksgiving this Thursday. So my last question to you, Charles, is are you making Andy Reid's mac and cheese recipe for Thanksgiving this year?
No, but if I ever actually get off my bro, I am trying to do something around that. It might be a year from now, it might be 2 years from now. You guys know me, but promise gonna get off my and do something about that after the season's over. But I've only made it once for myself. A long time ago, I was in my early 20s. I was really broke, and I spent almost all the money I had trying to make that mac and cheese, which was worth it. It was delicious, but I haven't made it again since then.
Okay. So it was not a struggle meal. You were struggling, but it was not.
Yes. Oh no, it's not a struggle meal at all. In fact, I would say if you were in a situation where I was making like 40 grand at SB Nation, don't make the Andy Reid mac and cheese. Don't, because if you're dating someone at the time, they'll get really mad at you when you're like, well, why can't we go anywhere? It's because we spent all the money on the mac and cheese. You got to wait another 2 weeks.
There you go. Life lessons.
Life lessons. Yeah.
There you go, guys. So, Charles, anything you want to plug? Any things that you're working on over at Yahoo or Football 301?
Yeah. Check out Football 301. I do it with Nate Tice and Matt Harmon. Nate and I just launched a Sunday recap show. So the Falcons didn't play this past week, but they play this upcoming Sunday. So we'll get to that and every other game every Sunday for the rest of the season. So yeah, check out that. Check out the work we're doing at Yahoo Sports and all the podcasts that we've launched. I've been filling in every once in a while for Kyle Van Noy on the Gerald McCoy and Kyle Van Noy podcast. So you can definitely check that out if you just want to hear a Falcons fan and the Bucks legend on the Saints. Check out whenever I'm on there.
Sounds great to me. So I'm So Charles, again, check out Charles's work over at Yahoo Sports, guys. And we'll see what's what for the Atlanta Falcons this weekend. Tomorrow, of course, will be a crossover Thursday, where I'll be joined by Locked On Chargers host Daniel Wade to preview this Week 13 game more in depth. Check it out on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.